Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is the second class on market research, and today three topics like last time. Today's topics are quantitative research versus qualitative research. We will focus on questionnaires and sampling, and we will discuss observations. The, the kind of research you are most familiar with might be quantitative research. If you read in the newspaper that, for instance, 60% of the employees starts working without having had breakfast, well, you see the headlines, 60% of employees don't have breakfast. Well, that's an example of quantitative research. What is the goal of quantitative research? Well, make an inventory of features, characteristics, measure them, count them, and explain them in statistics. When you conduct quantitative research, you know exactly what you're looking for. We're talking about carefully chosen topics. Um, One of the characteristics of quantitative research is that the researcher uses fixed tools such as questionnaires, and the outcomes are being presented in statistics. When you conduct quantitative research, you're aiming for objectivity, and if another person were to replicate your research, well, the outcomes should be more or less similar. The outcomes are presented in figures, graphs, tables, details are missing. And you approach a small size of the population, we call that a sample. And what that small size says, that should be representative for the entire population. Well, and you see in the right column the features of qualitative research. And qualitative research has a different angle. Qualitative research is more aimed at understanding people, what is going on in their mind. If you start with qualitative research, you have a plan in mind, you know roughly what you're looking for, but you might change your plan. It's suitable for early stages in research projects, and the more people you interview, because the method you apply most is interview people, the more people you interview, the more the topic might come clear. Qualitative data are very rich, are speaking, but they are hard to generalize. And when you conduct qualitative research, if two people research the same topic through qualitative research, well, the research project itself might look entirely different. The person of the researcher has quite an impact. Um, you can combine qualitative and quantitative research. That depends on your research question and your research goals. And you can choose the following options. You can conduct quantitative research only, and that's fine. You can conduct qualitative research only, and that's fine as well. What happens a lot is that you first start with qualitative research. So first you interview several people on their, for instance, breakfast habits, and you interview person 1, and then you go to person 3, and then to person 4, and then person 5, and the information you collect you are going to use to make a questionnaire. And the fourth option is first you conduct quantitative research and then you discuss the outcomes with people. When you combine qualitative research and quantitative research, we call that triangulation. And if the outcomes of a quantitative and a qualitative approach, if they match, then your research has more credibility. Oh, well, I already gave it away. Quantitative research only a questionnaire on breakfast habits. How do you have your breakfast? Full breakfast, continental breakfast, English breakfast, cup of coffee only, no breakfast at all. Well, if you hand out questionnaires to quite a number of people and you collect them, then you conduct quantitative research. If you do qualitative research, then you start interviewing people on their breakfast habits and you go into detail. What time do you come from bed? How do you prepare breakfast? Oh, you skip breakfast at all. How do you catch up later? So a qualitative approach is more uh, providing a real insight in what people do and think. What you can do is first interview people and use the outcomes for drawing up a questionnaire. Well, I told that before. And another approach is you send out a questionnaire first and then you interview people about the outcomes. For instance, okay, we see here that many people skip breakfast and then ask people, why would people do that? Well, because they're in a hurry or they don't feel for it. What approach you choose, again, it is dependent on your research question and your research goals. A qualitative research fits in a flexible design. What does that mean? Well, your topic might develop step by step, and first you have an idea and you start interviewing, but first you thought, well, this is important, and then it turns out it's not that important at all. And you think, well, I mentioned something and maybe it's of minor importance, and then later it might be essential. You might even change your research question, and you might find out after you have interviewed a few people, I need to interview other people. Well, an example of this is you are interviewing people about walking with senior citizens, elderly people. And first you might have approached it from the perspective of health. It's a health problem that older people don't get enough exercise. But when you start interviewing people, you might find out, no, it's not a health problem. It's more a social problem. It's about loneliness and shame. How many people do you interview when you conduct qualitative interviews? Well, if you interview people on a topic, for instance, why did you quit Facebook? You go to person 1, he or she will tell you many things you haven't heard before. Then you go to person 2, he or she might tell you new things, but some things you've heard before. Then person 3, well, most of it you heard before. When do you stop interviewing people? When no new information is added. In many occasions that will be after you have interviewed 5 people. But again, it's dependent on your research question. Well, that's it for now. That was it on the differences and similarities between quantitative and qualitative research.